Hey everybody, welcome back to our exploration of system.text.json. All right, so we've been looking at what serialization and deserialization means in the JSON world and how we can go about like changing the name of our JSON properties when we write them out, and even like changing camel case and kebab case to them. But you know what, James? What happens if our objects have extra properties in them that I don't want to serialize out? I don't want the JSON string to have those at all.
Yeah.
How can I go about doing that? Is it possible?
Yeah, this happens all the time because often I have like a lot of like helper properties that are inside of my objects that are maybe like read-only fields, or maybe they're computing something. You know, if you have like, for example, temperature Celsius, you know, I might have a temperature Fahrenheit, but maybe I don't want to include both of those in the JSON, for example, or just have like temperature or like display temperature. I have that all the time where it does like a, you know, the little like symbol with an F or a C. You don't want to include that in your JSON.
Right. We want to be terse.
Yes, because that's the idea, right? Is JSON should be short and sweet, you know, and you should parse and not parse as much or as little as possible.
Yeah. And since it's like a data contract that we're sharing with everybody, we want to be sure that we share the correct stuff that people are expecting.
Totally. So let's talk about first ignoring anything that we want.
Yeah. Let's cut something out.
Boom. Let's do it. All right. So let's go back over to our sample code. And so far, we have something very, very straightforward and simple, which is a weather forecast. And here I'm just setting some defaults. So I have a date of now. The summary is null currently. Temperature is Celsius is default. And then wind speed is 10.
Yep.
Here I'm just going to specify a serialization option, which we covered, which is right indented, so we can kind of see it in the output really easily. And I'm calling serialize. That's it. One line of code. Good to go. Down here, we can see that I have my weather forecast object. So in my class here, I have a date, temperature, summary, wind speed. And I also added this thing called a wind speed read-only. So it's kind of a read-only, a little private set on there,
All right.
So the first thing that we might be interested in doing is just ignoring something. So when I run this, let me just go ahead and F5 this here. When I run this and I add the breakpoint, we'll see that it's going to take everything inside of my class by default and serialize it out. So sure enough, date, temperature Celsius, summary, wind speed read only.
OK, everything's there. It's in the class, it gets written out.
Yes.
So
what don't you want to see?
I don't want to see the summary. I can figure out everything from, you know, I have the temperature, I have the wind speed. Let's get rid.
You're going to write your own summary.
I'm going to write I'm going to infer it in my head.
Okay,
I don't need this.
Perfect. So you can add these little attributes onto anything. We saw that with the property names in a previous video, but I'm just going to say JSON ignore.
Wow, that's it.
That's it. Just ignore it. Like I don't care about it. Done. Now this will handle both the reading and writing to it in general. So this won't read it or write it or do anything.
Deserialize and serializing.
Yeah, that's actually kind of cool. A lot of these little attributes are going to apply both ways. So if you change the property name of it, it's going to ignore it, or it's going to change it 100%. So here we go. Here's our string, and sure enough, it's gone.
It's gone.
What?
I can't tell what happened, though. I mean, we should maybe, no, let's keep it out.
So there it is, right? So here is our our date, temperature Celsius, wind speed. Yeah, you're going to assume 10 Celsius. I don't know. Is that hot? Is that cold? I don't know.
I don't know.
Magic. I guess it's 0, so the wind speed. So we're totally good to know. Is it windy? Is it not? You know, you might want to take those into consideration there. So boom, good to go. Now, if you want it back, of course, you could just take it out.
All right.
Done.
Let's leave it in there.
Yeah.
Let's leave it in. All right. So there's a couple other things I noticed here, James.
Yes.
One, we have our wind speed read-only property. Do we really want to pop a read-only in there all the time?
Probably not, because it's read-only. So you know, it's kind of a few options to kind of do that, and this could be inside of your code. Again, this could be something that you want to ignore, but you know, you might have a lot of these, right? So you might have wind speed, kilometers, wind speed this and that, and blah, 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 blah. You might have a bunch of different things. So you can actually blanket, kind of globally say, hey, ignore all read-only properties inside of it. So we can go up to this serialization options, and here I can say ignore. And we can see that there's actually ignore read-only fields and read-only properties. And these are properties, they have getters and setters. So we're just going to go ahead and say true. That's it. So we're just going to ignore them. That's pretty easy, right? It's like very customizable. Right? So I know you're expecting a lot more from what was going on there, but sure enough, we have our JSON here, and now we just have wind speed.
Right.
It's gone.
Don't need it.
Yeah. So now
Not
it's
there.
getting pretty small.
Yeah, terse.
I like it. Terse.
Yes.
Very nice.
That's my new favorite word.
Yes.
I like terse. It sounds like what it means.
Yes.
What's the word for that? I have no idea.
Yeah. Not terse.
Yeah. So we leave it in the comments.
So it's good, right? So we have a lot of that stuff. So now our read-only properties are gone.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, there's something else. When we were initializing our class up here,
Yep.
there's one thing else I noticed. Temperature Celsius. We're just saying default.
Yes.
It comes through as 0, but I mean, it's just a default, right?
Yeah.
What happens if I don't want that? It's like, yeah, should I be passing that? Eventually I got it into a string.
Yep.
And I'm going to send it out to the internet, but it's just default. I mean,
Yeah.
do I need that?
Is it helpful? Probably not.
Yeah.
Same thing kind of with null. There's like, is that helpful? Is it not helpful?
Yeah.
What does that
right.
even be?
Exactly.
Well, you can customize this as well. So here we have more options inside of our serialization options. So I can say, for example, default ignore condition.
Oh,
Here.
like this.
This is cool. So here, for example, I can say never, always. And here I can say when writing default, there we go. Or I can say dot, there we go, that's helpful. When writing default, never, always, when writing null. So for example, when I'm writing default, ignore that.
I like that.
Yeah. So here I can just go ahead and add that up, and I can of course pipe multiple of those together. Now the default is never, so which is don't ignore anything.
Ignore
it's like
things.
the opposite of in general. So here I'm just going to say, you know what? Leave the wind, leave the date because they're there. I'm already ignoring the summary, which is null,
Right.
for example, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit continue there. And now we can see down here we have only date and wind speed that's going on.
Right.
So that's quite nice.
We're not really telling the weather so much now, but we're,
we let anyone else infer if it's not there that it's the default, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
But when you think about it, if I was to read back this exact string and deserialize it, it would not have anything to deserialize, and it would leave the default.
That's even more helpful.
Yeah. So like, why put it in if it is just the default of 0?
Yeah.
Right? So
Exactly.
just infer that in general. If it's not there, then it's not there.
I like that.
So there we go. We have wind speed of 10. Now you might be saying, okay, well, we have that JSON ignore. What if we didn't ignore it there? What if I wanted that to be null, right? So when writing null. So now in this case, we're still going to get the default, but we won't get the null in this case. We're still ignoring our read-only properties. So now in this case, we can see that temperature Celsius of 0 is coming in to it, and we're good to go.
So what if I wanted to ignore both null and default values? Because I can see a case where neither of those I don't want to send, or serialize. Yeah, I always get serialize and deserialize mixed up in my head. But anyways.
Read or write.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, null and default. I don't want those.
So
let's ignore them.
all I need to do is just kind of pipe these two together. So I'll say, and here. So we're going to combine these two together, and we're just going to say when writing null and when writing default.
Gotcha.
And that's it. And then what this will do is it'll use either condition here. And what this should now give us back is just our date and wind speed. So if I look at the JSON that's in there, date, wind speed, boom, good to go. We're now removing the summary and the temperature as well.
That's great.
Which is cool. But this is actually really customizable. So these are the default ignore conditions. But you can actually customize these a lot more. So here, this is very blanketed.
Right.
But if I wanted to, for example, I could go a little bit further down into the actual class, and I could specify specific properties and attributes to them. So for example, what I could do here is I could say JsonIgnore. And what I didn't show before is that there's actually a condition on here. Yeah, really cool. So the same conditions I used as the default are now also available here. So I could say when writing default, for example, I can now take this and I could say, you know what? Celsius, no matter what, I could say, never, like always, or whatever I want to do. Yep. Here I could say, when writing null, for example, and same thing here. I could do this one as default. I can basically have these different ones automatically that are coming in here. Now I don't need to specify anything on the options. And in fact, if I didn't pass in any options at all inside of here, so let's just go ahead and remove this option here. Here we go. So I'm just passing in the default, this will pretty much use these attributes for us automatically based on what we want to do. So now we're going to go in and we're going to see what it does basically inside of here. So here we should get, for example, we get the date, temperature, wind speed, and wind speed read only. So here, this is JsonIgnore never, so never ignore it.
Always.
Right, always do it. This is null, so we didn't see it, right? Now here, for example, I could change this, and I could probably say, you know what, I always want, always want my date. I don't want the default of this. I don't want the default of this, if it's default, and null here. And we can run this again, and now we'll trim it back down. So we can highly customize this code when I'm serializing and deserializing.
Right. And so what you put into the JSON serialization or the JSON serializer settings, that applies to everything, but anything that you put down on the properties takes precedence.
Correct. So great example. Like, what if I came back in here and we undid this, okay? And we go and say, you know what? We want this back here, but we want the default to be just when writing the default.
Sure.
Right? But we might still want null as well in like one case.
Okay.
Like maybe in the summary case. So what I could do is I could come down here and I could say JsonIgnore, but like we said earlier, we could just blanket ignore it, or we can do that condition, and we can say when writing null, just on the summary. So just like we've shown before when we were doing property names and different adjustments for the different casing, these will be combined. There's the default, but then there's sort of this additional layer that's on top of it, right? So now we see there's no summary because it's null.
Gotcha. Amazing. So there's another thing I want to point out is that if you remember back in our last video when we were changing the names of properties to match, we wanted wind speed, we had that in our class. We wanted it to be wind in the JSON. We changed it both in the serializer settings, which applied to everything. We also changed things down in the class itself. Same thing is applying here. So it's like the same kind of paradigm that you're used to applies to everything. So it kind of, once you start getting into your groove, it's the same thing everywhere, which is cool. Now, James, I'm going to take you off script here.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm ready.
So let's go and remove all of our attributes in the class itself, all of our ignores.
Got it.
All right, let's go back up to the serializer settings.
Okay.
All right, so default ignore condition, make that dot always.
Okay.
We shouldn't get anything, right? I've never tried this before, right? Our string should be empty.
Should be, yeah, it should be. And in fact,
oh, nice. Can't do it.
Correct.
Don't be dumb, Matt.
Yeah.
The value cannot. Well, how about that? The team actually thought that they had the Matt rule in here.
Yeah.
You're never going to get anything.
You're never going to get that.
Wow.
Now,
cool.
The reason that exists in this space is because you can go down here, right?
Down lower.
So for example, I could say JsonIgnore, and then I can say condition equals, and then I can say always.
Right.
Here. When I say JsonIgnore, it basically is always
That's the
there.
default condition of JsonIgnore.
But it's good to know, because you might be trying to do that. I know you should probably never want to do it globally, but it's there. But you might want, like you said.
I have to see what would happen,
Yeah, writing default. So
that's cool.
This is a good one to have in general when you're writing defaults, but you say, hey, no matter what, always ignore summary.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right.
Lots of little customization for those serialization options to ignore and change those things up. So just a kind of sneak peek. And of course, we'll link the documentation to system text JSON and all of the other optimizations and customizations that you can do.
For sure.
Yep. And we have other videos here on the .NET YouTube for system text JSON and all the cool things that you can do. So definitely check those out. And if you like this video at all, give it a thumbs up, jam that notification bell, become part of the notification squad over here on the .NET YouTube so you get notified every single time we put out a video. That's going to do it for this video. I'm James.
I'm Matt.
Thanks for watching.